From Romans 2, verses 8 and 9. But unto them that are contentious, and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish upon every soul of man that does evil, of the Jew first and also of the Gentile. It is the drift of the apostle in the 3 first chapters of this epistle to show that both Jews and Gentiles are under sin, and therefore cannot be justified by works of law, but only by faith in Christ. In the first chapter he had shown that the Gentiles were under sin. In this he shows that the Jews also are under sin, and that however severe they were in their censures upon the Gentiles, yet they themselves did the same things, for which the apostle very much blames them. Therefore thou art inexcusable, O man, whosoever thou art that judgest. For wherein thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself. For thou that judgest doest the same things. And he warns him not to go on in such a way, by forewarning them of the misery to which they will expose themselves by it, and by giving them to understand that instead of their misery being less than that of the Gentiles, it would be the greater. For God's distinguishing goodness to them above the Gentiles, the Jew thought that they should be exempted from future wrath, because God had chosen them to be his peculiar people. But the apostle informs them that there should be indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish to every soul of man, not only to the Gentiles, but to every soul, and to the Jew first, and chiefly, when they did evil, because their sins were more aggravated. In the text we find 1, a description of wicked men, in which may be observed those qualifications of wicked men which have the nature of a cause, and those which have the nature of an effect. Those qualifications of wicked men here mentioned that have the nature of a cause are their being contentious, and not obeying the truth, but obeying unrighteousness. By their being contentious is meant their contentiousness against the truth. They're quarreling with the gospel. They're finding fault with his declarations and offers. Unbelievers find many things in the ways of God at which they stumble, and by which they are offended. They are always quarreling and finding fault with one thing or another, whereby they are kept from believing the truth and yielding to it. Christ is to them a stone of stumbling and rock of offense. They do not obey the truth. That is, they do not yield to it, and they do not receive it with faith. That yielding to the truth and embracing it, which there is in saving faith, is called obeying in Scripture, Romans 6:17. But God be thanked that you were the servants of sin, but you have obeyed from the heart a form of doctrine which was delivered you. Hebrews 5, verse 9, and being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation to all them that obey him. In Romans 1, verse 5, by whom we have received grace and apostleship, for obedience to the faith among all nations for his name. But they obey unrighteousness instead of yielding to the gospel. They are under the power and dominion of sin, and are slaves to their lusts and corruptions. It is in those qualifications of wicked men that their wickedness radically consists. Their unbelief and opposition to the truth, and their slavish subjection to lust are the foundation of all wickedness. Those qualifications of wicked men which have the nature of an effect are their doing evil. This is the least of their opposition against the gospel, and of their slavish subjection to their lusts, that they do evil. Those wicked principles are the foundation, and their wicked practice is the superstructure. Those were the root, and this is the fruit. Number 2, the punishment of wicked men, in which may be also noticed the cause and the effect, though things mentioned in their punishment that have the nature of a cause are indignation and wrath. In other words, the indignation and wrath of God. It is the anger of God that will render wicked men miserable. They will be the subjects of divine wrath, and hence will arise their whole punishment. Though things in their punishment that have the nature of an effect are tribulation and anguish. Indignation and wrath in God will work extreme sorrow, trouble, and anguish of heart in them. Doctrine. Indignation, wrath, misery, and anguish of soul are the portion that God has allotted to wicked men. Every one of mankind must have the portion that belongs to him. God allots to each one his portion, and the portion of the wicked is nothing but wrath and distress and anguish of soul. Though they may enjoy a few empty and vain pleasures and delights for a few days while they stay in this world, yet that which is allotted to them by the possessor and governor of all things to be their portion is only indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish. This is not the portion that wicked men choose. The portion that they choose is worldly happiness. Yet it is a portion that God carves out for them. It is a portion that they in effect choose for themselves. For they choose those things that naturally and necessarily lead to it. And those that they are plainly told, times without number will issue in it. Proverbs 8, verse 36. But he that sins against me wrongs his own soul. All they that hate me love death. But whether they choose it or not, this will and must be the portion to all eternity of all who live and die wicked men. Indignation and wrath shall pursue them as long as they live in this world, shall drive them out of the world, and shall follow them into another world, and their wrath and misery shall abide upon them throughout eternity. The method that I shall take in treating the subject is to describe the wrath and misery of which wicked men shall be the subjects, both here and hereafter, in the successive parts and periods of it, according to the order of time. First, I shall describe the wrath that often pursues wicked men in this life. Indignation and wrath often begin with them here. God oftentimes in wrath leaves them to themselves. They are left in their sins, and left to undo themselves, and work out their own ruin. He lets them alone in sin, Hosea 4, verse 17. Ephraim is joined to his idols. Let him alone. He often leaves him to go great lengths in sin, and does not afford them that restraining grace that he does to others. He leaves them to their own blindness, so that they always remain ignorant of God and Christ, and of the things that belong to their peace. They are sometimes left to hardness of heart, to be stupid and senseless, so that nothing will ever thoroughly awaken them. They are left to their own heart's lust, to continue in some wicked practices all their days. Some are left to their covetousness, some to drunkenness, some to uncleanness, some to a proud, contentious, and envious spirit, and some to a spirit of finding fault and quarreling with God. God leads them to their folly, to act exceedingly foolishly, to delay and put off the concerns of their souls from time to time, never to think the present time the best, but always to keep it at a distance, and foolishly to continue flattering themselves with hopes of long life, and to put far away the evil day, and to bless themselves in their hearts and say, I shall have peace, though I add drunkenness to thirst. Some are so left that they are miserably hardened and senseless, when others all around them are awakened and greatly concerned, and inquire what they shall do to be saved. Sometimes God leaves men to a fatal backsliding for a misimprovement of the strivings of his spirit. They are let alone to backslide perpetually. Dreadful is the life and condition of those who are thus left of God. We have examples of the misery of such in God's holy word, particularly of Saul and Judas. Such are sometimes very much left to the power of Satan to tempt them, to hurry them on in wicked courses, and exceedingly to aggravate their own guilt and misery. Number 2, indignation and wrath are sometimes exercised towards them in this world, by their being cursed in all that concerns them. They have this curse of God following them in everything. They are cursed in all their enjoyments. If they are in prosperity, it is cursed to them. if they possess riches, if they have honor, if they enjoy pleasure, there is a curse of God that attends it. When the wicked spring is the grass, and when all the workers of iniquity flourish, it is that they may be destroyed forever. Psalm 92, verse 7. There is a curse of God that attends their ordinary food, every morsel of bread which they eat, and every drop of water which they drink. Psalm 69, verse 22. Let their table become a snare before them, and that which should have been for their welfare, let it become a trap. They are cursed in all their employments, and whatsoever they put their hands to. When they go into the field to labor, or at work at their respective trades. Deuteronomy 28, verse 16. Cursed shall thou be in the city, and cursed shall thou be in the field. The curse of God remains in the houses where they dwell, and brimstone is scattered in their habitations. Job 18, verse 15. The curse of God attends them in the afflictions which they meet with, whereas the afflictions that good men meet with are fatherly corrections and are sent in mercy. The afflictions which wicked men meet with are in wrath, and come from God as an enemy, and are the foretaste of their everlasting punishment. The curse of God attends them also in their spiritual enjoyments and opportunities, and it would have been better for them not to have been born in a land of light. Their having the Bible and the Sabbath is only to aggravate their guilt and misery. The word of God, when preached to them, is a savor of death unto death. Better would it be for them if Christ had never come into the world, if there had never been any offer of a Savior. Life itself is a curse to them. They live only to fill up the measure of their sins. What they seek in all the enjoyments and employments and concerns of life is their own happiness. But they never obtain it. They never obtain any true comfort. All the comforts which they have are worthless and unsatisfying. If they lived 100 years with never so much of the world in their possession, their life is all filled up with vanity. All that they have is vanity of vanities. They do not find rest for their souls. They do but feed on the east wind. They have no real contentment. Whatever outward pleasures they may have, their souls are starving. They have no true peace of conscience. Whatever they do, they live in vain and to no purpose. They are useless in the creation of God. They do not answer the end of their being. They live without God and have not the presence of God nor any communion with Him. But on the contrary, all that they have and all that they do does but contribute to their own misery and render their future and everlasting state the more dreadful. The best of wicked men live but miserable and wretched lives. With all their prosperity, their lives are most undesirable, and whatever they have, the wrath of God abides upon them. Number 3, after a time they must die. Ecclesiastes 9, verse 3. This is an evil among all things that are done under the sun, that there is one event unto all. Yea, also the heart of the sons of men is full of evil, and madness is in their heart while they live. And after that they go to the dead. Death is a far different thing when it befalls wicked men, from when it befalls good men. To the wicked it is an execution of the curse of the law and of the wrath of God. When a wicked man dies, God cuts him off in wrath. He is taken away as by a tempest of wrath. He is driven away in his wickedness. Proverbs 14, verse 32. The wicked is driven away in his wickedness, but the righteous has hope in his death. Job 18, verse 18. He shall be driven from light into darkness and chased out of the world. Job 27, verse 21. The east wind carries him away, and he departs, and as a storm hurls him out of his place. The wicked men, while they live, may live in worldly prosperity, yet they cannot live here always, but they must die. The place that knows him shall know him no more, and the eye that has seen him shall see him no more in the land of the living. Their bounds are unchangeably set. And when they are come to those bounds, they must go, and must leave off all their worldly good things. If they have lived in outward glory, their glory shall not descend after them. They get nothing while they live that they can carry away. Ecclesiastes 5 verse 15. As he came forth of his mother's womb, naked shall he return to go as he came, and shall take nothing of his labor, which he may carry away in his hand. He must leave all his substance to others. If they are at ease and quietness, death will put an end to their quietness. It will spoil all their carnal mirth, and will strip them of all their glory. As they came naked into the world, so naked must they return, and go as they came. If they have laid up much goods for many years, if they have laid in stores as they hope for great comfort and pleasure, death will cut them off from all. Luke 12 verse 16. And he spake a parable to them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. And he said, This will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have much goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, You fool, this night your soul shall be required of you. Then whose shall those things be which you have provided? If they have many designs and projects in their breasts, for promoting their outward prosperity and worldly advantage, when death comes, it cuts off all at one blow. His breath goes forth, he returns to his earth, and that very day his thoughts perish. And so whatever diligence they have had in seeking their salvation, death will disappoint all such diligence. It will not wait for them to accomplish their designs, to fulfill their schemes. If they have pleased and pampered and adorned their bodies, death will spoil all their pleasure and their glory. It will change their countenances to a pale and ghastly aspect. Instead of their gay apparel and beautiful ornaments, they shall have only a winding sheet. Their house must be the dark and silent grave, and that body that they turned into a god shall turn to loathsome rottenness, and shall be eaten of worms, and turn to dust. Some wicked men die in youth. Wrath pursues them, and soon overtakes them. They are not allowed to live out half their days, Job 36:14. They die in youth, and their life is among the unclean. Psalm 55:23. But you, O God, shall bring them down into the pit of destruction. Bloody and deceitful men shall not live out half their days. They are sometimes overtaken in the very midst of their sin and vanity, and death puts a sudden end to all their youthful pleasures. They are often stopped in the midst of a career in sin, and then if their hearts cleave ever so fast to those things, they must be rent from them. They have no other good but outward good, but then they must eternally forsake it. They must close their eyes forever on all that has been dear and pleasant to them here. Number 4, wicked men are oftentimes the subjects of much tribulation and anguish of heart on their deathbeds. Sometimes the pains of body are very extreme and dreadful, and what they endure in those agonies and struggles for life after they are past speaking, and when body and soul are rending asunder, none can know. Hezekiah had an awful sense of it. He compares it to a lion's breaking all of his bones. Isaiah 38 verses 12 and 13. Mine age is departed and is removed from me as a shepherd's tent. I have cut off as a weaver my life. He will cut me off with pining sickness. From day even to night will you make an end of me. I reckon till morning, that as a lion, so will he break all my bones. From day even to night will you make an end of me. But this is but little to what is sometimes undergone by wicked men in their souls when they are on their deathbeds. Death appears sometimes with an exceedingly terrible aspect to them. When it comes and stares them in the face, they cannot bear to behold it. It is always so if wicked men have notice of the approach of death. and of reason and conscience and exercise, and are not either obdurate or distracted. When this king of tears comes to show himself to them, and they're called forth to meet him, oh, how do they dread the conflict! But meet him they must. There is no man that has power over the Spirit to retain the Spirit, neither has he power in the day of death. And there is no discharge in that war, neither shall wickedness deliver those that are given to it. Death comes to them with all of its dreadful armor, and his sting not taken away, and it is enough to fill their souls with torment that cannot be expressed. It is an awful thing for a person to be lying on a sick bed, to be given over by physicians, to have friends stand weeping around the bed as expecting to part with him, and in such circumstances as those, to have no hope, to be without an interest in Christ, and to have the guilt of his sins lying on his soul, to be going out of the world without his peace being made with God, to stand before his holy judgment seat in all his sins without anything to plead or answer, to see the only opportunity to prepare for eternity coming immediately to an end, after which there shall be no more time of probation, but his case will be unalterably fixed, and there never will be another offer of a Savior, for the soul to come just to the very edge of the boundless gulf of eternity, and insensibly to launch forth into it, without any God or Savior to take care of it, to be brought to the edge of the precipice, to see himself falling down into the lake of fire and brimstone, and to feel he has no power to stop himself. Who can tell the shrinkings and misgivings of heart in such a case? How does he endeavor to hang back? But yet he must go on. It is in vain to wish for further opportunity. Oh, how happy does he think those that stand about him, who may yet live, may have their lives continue longer, when he must go immediately into an endless eternity. How does he wish it might be with him as with those who have a longer time to prepare for their trial. But it must not be so. Death, sent on purpose to summon him, will give him no release nor respite. He must go before the holy judgment seat of God as he is, to have his everlasting state determined according to his works. To such persons how differently do things appear from what they did in the time of health, and when they looked at death as at a distance. How differently does sin look to them now, those sins which they used to make light of. How dreadful is it now to look back and consider how they have spent their time, how foolish they have been, how they have gratified and indulged their lusts, and lived in ways of wickedness, how careless they have been, and how they have neglected their opportunities and advantages, how they have refused to hearken to counsel, and have not repented in spite of all the warnings that were given. Proverbs 5:11-13. And you mourn at the last when your flesh and your body are consumed, and say, How have I hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof, and have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined mine ear to them that instructed me. How differently does the world appear to them now. They used to set much by it, and have their hearts taken up with it. But what does it avail them now? How insignificant are all their riches. Riches profit not in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. What different thoughts they now have of God and of his wrath. They used to make light of the wrath of God, but how terrible does it now appear. How does their hearts sink at the thoughts of appearing before such a God? How different are their thoughts of time. Now time appears precious, and oh, what would they not give for a little more time? Some have in such circumstances been brought out to cry out, Oh, 1,000 worlds for an hour, for a moment. And how differently does eternity now appear. Now it is awful indeed. Some have been brought on a deathbed to cry out, Oh, eternity, eternity, eternity. What a dismal gulf does it appear to them when they come to the very brink of it. They often at such times cry for mercy and cry in vain. God called, and they would not hear. They set at naught his counsels, and would none of his reproofs. Now also he laughs at their calamity, and mocks when their fear comes. They beseech others to pray for them. They send for ministers, but all often fails them. They draw nearer and nearer to death, and eternity comes more and more immediately in view. And who can express their horror when they feel themselves clasped in the cold arms of death, when their breath fails more and more, and their eyes begin to be fixed and grow dim? That which is then felt by them cannot be told nor conceived. Some wicked men have much of the horror and despair of hell in their last sickness. Ecclesiastes 5:17. All his days also he eats in darkness, and he has much sorrow and wrath with his sickness. Secondly, I shall describe the wrath that attends wicked men hereafter. The soul, when it is separated from the body, shall be cast down into hell. There is without doubt a particular judgment by which every man is to be tried at death, beside the general judgment. For the soul, as soon as it departs from the body, appears before God to be judged. Ecclesiastes 12. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. That is, to be judged and disposed of by him. Hebrews 9 verse 27. It is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. But this particular judgment is probably no such solemn transaction as that which will be at the day of judgment. The soul must appear before God, but not in a manner that men shall appear at the end of the world. The souls of wicked men shall not go to heaven to appear before God. Neither shall Christ descend from heaven for the soul to appear before him. Neither is it to be supposed that the soul shall be carried to any place where there is some special symbol of the divine presence in order to be judged. But as God is everywhere present, so the soul shall be made immediately sensible of his presence. Souls in a separate state shall be sensible of the presence of God, and of his operations in another manner than we now are. All separated spirits may be said to be before God. The saints are in his glorious presence, and the wicked in hell are in his dreadful presence. They are said to be tormented in the presence of the Lamb, Revelation 14 verse 10. The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. So the soul of a wicked man, at its departure from the body, will be made immediately sensible that it is before an infinitely holy and dreadful God and his own final judge. It will then see how terrible a God he is. He will see how holy a God he is, how infinitely he hates sin. He will be sensible of the greatness of God's anger against sin, and how dreadful is his displeasure. Then will he be sensible of the dreadful majesty and power of God, and how fearful a thing it is to fall into his hands. Then the soul shall come naked with all of its guilt, and in all of its filthiness, a vile, loathsome, abominable creature, an enemy to God, a rebel against him, with the guilt of all of its rebellion and disregard of God's commands, and contempt of his authority and slight of the glorious gospel, before God as its judge. This will fill the soul with horror and amazement. It is not to be supposed that this judgment will be attended with any voice or any such outward transactions as a judgment at the end of the world, but God shall manifest himself in his strict justice inwardly, to the immediate view of the soul and to the sense and apprehension of the conscience. This particular judgment probably will not hinder, but that the soul shall be cast into hell immediately when it goes from the body. As soon as ever the soul departs from the body, the soul shall know what its state and condition are to be to all eternity. As long as there is life, there is hope. The man, while he lived, though his case was exceedingly dreadful, yet had some hope. When he lay dying, there was a possibility of salvation. But when once the union between soul and body is broken, then that moment the case becomes desperate, and there remains no hope, no possibility of it. On their deathbeds, perhaps they had some hope that God would pity them and hear their cries, or that he would hear the prayers of their pious friends for them. They were ready to lay hold on something which they had at some time met with, some religious affection or some change in their external conduct, and to flatter themselves that they were then converted. They were able to indulge some degree of hope from the moral lives that they had lived, that God would have respect to them and save them. But as soon as ever the soul parts from the body, from that moment the case will be absolutely determined. There will then be an end forever to all hope, to everything that men hang upon in this life. The soul then shall know certainly that it is to be miserable to all eternity without any remedy. It shall see that God is its enemy. It shall see its judge clothed in his wrath and vengeance. Then its misery will begin. It will at that moment be swallowed up in despair. The great gulf will be fixed between it and happiness. The door of mercy will be forever shut up. The irrecoverable sentence will be passed. Then shall the wicked know what is before them. Before, the soul was in distress for fear how it would be, but now all its fears shall come upon it. It shall come upon it as a mighty flood, and there shall be no escaping. The soul was full of amazement before through fear, but now who can conceive the amazement that fills at that moment when all hope is cut off and it knows that there will never be any difference? When a good man dies, his soul is conducted by holy angels to heaven, Luke 16, verse 22. And it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. So we may well suppose that when a wicked man dies, his soul is seized by wicked angels, that they are around his bed, ready to seize the miserable soul as soon as it is parted from the body. And with what fierceness and fury do those cruel spirits fly upon their prey, and the soul shall be left in their hands. There shall be no good angels to guard and defend it. God will take no merciful care of it. There is nothing to help it against those cruel spirits that shall lay hold of it to carry it to hell, there to torment it forever. God will leave it wholly in their hands, and will give it up to their possession when it comes to die, and it shall be carried down into hell to the abode of devils and damned spirits. If the fear of hell on a deathbed sometimes fills the wicked with amazement, how will they be overwhelmed when they feel its torments, when they shall find them not only as great, but far greater than their fears. They shall find them far beyond what they could conceive of before they felt them. For none know the power of God's anger but they that experience it. Departed spirits of wicked men are doubtless carried to some particular place in the universe, which God has prepared to be the receptacle of his wicked, rebellious, and miserable subjects, a place where God's avenging justice shall be glorified, a place built to be the prison where devils and wicked men are reserved till the day of judgment. Here the souls of wicked men shall suffer extreme and amazing misery in a separate state until the resurrection. This misery is not indeed their full punishment, nor is the happiness of the saints before the day of judgment their full happiness. It is with the souls of wicked men as it is with devils. Though the devils suffer extreme torment now, yet they do not suffer their complete punishment, and therefore it is said that they are cast down to hell and bound in chains, 2 Peter 2, verse 4. God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them in the chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment, Jude 6. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness to the judgment of the great day. They are reserved in a state they are in. And for what are they reserved but for a greater degree of punishment? and therefore they are said to tremble for fear. James 2:19. You believe there is one God? You do well. The devils also believe and tremble. Hence, when Christ was on earth, the devils were greatly afraid that Christ was come to torment them. And behold, they cried out, saying, What have we to do with you, Jesus, you Son of God? Are you come here to torment us before the time? Mark 5:7. And cried with a loud voice and said, What have I to do with you, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, you torment me not. But yet they are there in extreme and inconceivable misery. They are there deprived of all good. They have no rest nor comfort, and they are the subject to the wrath of God. God there executes wrath on them without mercy, and they are swallowed up in wrath. He cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. Here we are told that when the rich man died, he lifted up his eyes, being in torment. And he tells Abraham that he is tormented in a flame, and it seems that the flame was not only about him, but in him. He therefore asked for a drop of water to cool his tongue. This doubtless is to represent to us that they are full of the wrath of God, as it were, with fire, and they shall there be tormented in the midst of devils and damned spirits, and they shall have inexpressible torment from their own consciences. God's wrath is a fire that never shall be quenched, and the conscience is a worm that never dies. How much do men suffer from horror of conscience sometimes in this world? But how much more in hell? What bitter and tormenting reflections will they have concerning the folly they have been guilty of in their lives, and so neglecting their souls when they had such an opportunity for repentance, that they went on so foolishly to treasure up wrath against the day of wrath, to add to the record of their sins from day to day, to make their misery yet greater and greater. How have they kindled the fires of hell for themselves and spent their lives in gathering the fuel? They will not be able to help revolving such thoughts in their minds, and how tormenting will they be? And those who go to hell never can escape there. There they remain imprisoned till the day of judgment, and their torments remain continually. Those wicked men who died many years ago, their souls went to hell, and there they are still. Those who went to hell in former ages of the world have been in hell ever since, all the while suffering torment. They have nothing else to spend their time in there but to suffer torment. They are kept in being for no other purpose. And though they have many companions in hell, yet there are no comfort to them, for there is no friend, no love, no pity, no quietness, no prospect of the future, no hope.